body will become serviceable, and the more flexible and serviceable the mind will become. And we'll achieve this full pliancy when we achieve Shamatha. Shamatha is the diagram in the middle at the top here. And at the middle of the top we see the person, the meditator, flying through the sky. So this is symbolizing what's called physical pliancy. It's said that when we achieve Shamatha, our body feels light like cotton. So that's symbolized by the person floating through the sky. Then we have the meditator on the elephant of the mind. So the elephant here is symbolizing the mind. So this is symbolizing mental pliancy, meaning we can now direct our mind to whatever we want without any resistance whatsoever. So that's mental pliancy. So this is physical mental pliancy that really comes with the achievement of Shamatha. And we'll talk more about that in a few days' time in the evening. And regarding the benefits of Shamatha, I'd like to read a little bit, again from Attention Revolution from Alan Wallace, that when we actually achieve Shamatha, what sort of benefits can we find? So this is on page 159. He says the following. Due to deep attentional stability, you feel as if your sleep is suffused with samadhi and many pure dreams. Your sense of attentional clarity becomes so great that you feel that you could count the atoms of the pillars and walls of your house. And your attention is highly focused throughout all your daily activities. These exceptional degrees of stability and clarity of your awareness carry over to a considerable degree in your consciousness after you arise from your meditation practice and engage in your daily affairs, when your mind returns to the desire realm. The desire realm is the realm of our existence. When your mind disengages from your activity, it naturally slips back into a space-like state of awareness, and physical and mental pliancy arise very swiftly. The most important effect of Shamatha that lingers on between meditation sessions is a temporary relative freedom from afflictive thoughts and emotions. So that's, of course, talking about things like anger, craving, jealousy, anxiety, and so forth. It's not that they don't arise at all anymore, but they occur less frequently, with less intensity, and for shorter periods. In particular, you are mostly free of the 5 hindrances as long as you don't lose your attentional balance. So the 5 hindrances, things like sensual craving, malice, meaning negative wanting harm on others, lethargy and drowsiness is one, excitation and anxiety another, and then uncertainty. So those 5 hindrances are mostly dormant. They don't really come up much at all. Between meditation sessions, you retain an exceptional degree of both kinds of pliancy and fitness, which causes you to naturally be inclined to acting virtuously. Shamatha adepts report that due to bodily fitness, they have no feelings of physical heaviness or discomfort. Your spine becomes, and there's a quote from a text here, straight like a golden pillar, and your body feels blissful. Due to mental fitness or pliancy, you are now fully in control of your mind, virtually free of sadness and grief, and continuously experiencing a state of well-being. As the Buddha declared, those who have achieved any state of meditative stabilization abide in happiness here and now. Sounds pretty good. So if we can appreciate these sorts of benefits for the practice, then of course we'll have faith in the practice, that it's going to benefit us. We'll have a lot of aspiration to do the practice. We'll enthusiastically put effort into the practice, and the further we get into the practice, the more we'll have this physical and mental flexibility and pliancy. So that's the first of the faults of laziness. The second is forgetfulness. And so here the antidote, of course, is mindfulness. Forgetfulness can mean here either forgetting the instructions or forgetting the object. So, of course, mindfulness is to remember the instructions, to remember the object, to hold the object. And the third fault here is the pair of laxity and excitation. So laxity is the technical word for dullness, and excitation here is the most common form of distraction, that we are often distracted by pleasurable stimulus, the so-called sense pleasures. And we see that also in your chart here. If you look down towards the bottom on the left, you see a bowl of fruit, so that is taste. Beside that, you see a silk cloth, so that is touch or tactile sensations. Above that, you have two round objects, which are symbols, which is sound. To the left of that, you have a shell with some perfume in it, so that's smell. And then diagonally above that, you have a round object, which is a mirror, so that's visual objects. So these are the 5 sense objects that are the most common form of distraction. So hence, we see the word excitation here, the most common form of distraction. So of course, the antidote to laxity and excitation or dullness and distraction is introspection, to notice when we're becoming dull or distracted. The fourth fault here is non-application. So non-application means that we've noticed that we've become dull or distracted and we don't do anything about that. So that's a fault. So the antidote to that is application, which means fix it. And usually this means if we've noticed we've become dull or distracted, simply reapply mindfulness. And then there's one last fault called over-application. And as a beginner, this is not really a big problem, but once we get to the higher levels of this practice, this could become a problem. And that is, over-application means that we're actually focusing on the object quite well, but we're unnecessarily adjusting our focus. So that's a fault. So the antidote is here equanimity. Equanimity means balance, which means our mind is already balanced, so just leave it alone. So therefore the saying is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So that's over-application. But for us as a beginner, usually we have to keep applying antidotes because we're constantly going into dullness and distraction. But later, once we get more focused, then this could become a problem if we're adjusting our focus unnecessarily. So these are the 5 faults and the 8 antidotes. So of course the 2 main imbalances we have in our practice are dullness and distraction, or here called laxity and excitation. So therefore what tends to happen is we usually sort of go to one of those. We end up either going off completely in distraction or drifting into very heavy dullness. So therefore what we can do is on every breath we can balance the mind. And that is, on the out breath is a natural time to emphasize relaxing and releasing any distraction. So helping overcome agitation, tension and distraction on the out breath. And the in-breath is a natural time to sharpen the focus, to overcome dullness. So relaxing and releasing tension and distractions on the out-breath, and then sharpening the focus on the in-breath. So if we're doing this balancing on each breath, we can sort of stay balanced and not then go either into a lot of dullness or a lot of distraction. And there's a couple of key words that we can use to help us, to remind us what to do when we become dull or distracted. So for distraction, to remind us what to do, to be helpful as a beginner, that we have three terms here: relax, release, return, which I've talked about a little bit already. So of course, when we get distracted, the natural tendency can be to get upset and frustrated, and then tense. So therefore, to counteract that, as soon as you notice you become distracted, then actually, instead of getting frustrated, be happy that you've noticed you've become distracted. And the very first thing to do then is simply relax. Relax the body and mind to avoid this tightening up more. And then release the distraction, just let go of the distraction. And then very gently return to the object. And when we return to the object, don't clamp down more forcefully. Very gently return to the object. So relax, release, return. Similarly for dullness, there's three key terms that can help us to remind us what to do. One of the most common reasons we fall into dullness and drowsiness and sleepiness is that we've simply lost interest in the practice. So just like at home, if you're at home in the evening, you're watching some program on TV and you don't find it very interesting, then often we just sort of like fall asleep. Whereas, of course, if the program is very interesting, we're completely there. So similarly in this practice, often we sort of just drift into dullness because we've simply lost interest in the practice. So therefore, we can refresh our interest in the practice, again by maybe reflecting momentarily on the benefits of the practice. By appreciating the benefits of the practice, then we'll have a lot of interest to do in the practice. So refresh interest in the practice. And then restore our attention on the object. So we fall into dullness, just reapply mindfulness to restore our attention. And then retain the flow of mindfulness. So don't just sort of restore and then drop it again. So if we're getting dull because we've lost interest, refresh interest, restore our attention on the object, reapply mindfulness, and then retain that mindfulness. Don't just apply mindfulness and let it go again. Retain the flow of mindfulness. And here in the flow of mindfulness on the breath, to maintain that continuity throughout the entire cycle of each in and out breath. So within each breath cycle, retaining that flow as continually as possible. So these are some key words that can help us as a beginner to remind us of what to do when we fall into dullness or distraction. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the breath abdomen practice. and then we'll go back to the practice. So again, I'd like to read a little bit from the Attention Revolution again. So this is on page 33. He says, we began this practice at stage 1 with a primary emphasis on relaxation. So again, the foundation is relaxation. Generally, the more relaxed we are, the more stable our attention can become. But that relaxation must be balanced with vigilance. Otherwise, it will simply lead to laxity, sluggishness, or unbridled daydreaming. Once we have established a foundation of relaxation, we can more strongly emphasize attentional stability. So we saw the 3 qualities of relaxation, stability, clarity. The relationship between those 3 qualities is like the analogy of a tree. First, we need to sink deep roots of relaxation. And those deep roots of relaxation can then support a strong trunk of stability. The stronger the trunk of stability, the higher the branches and leaves of clarity can grow. So if we don't first sink deep roots of relaxation, our tree of Shamatha practice will simply fall over. So first, deep roots of relaxation, that can support the strong trunk of stability. The stronger the trunk of stability, the higher the branches and leaves of clarity can grow. One way to, and back to Wallace, one way to cultivate attentional stability is to direct our attention downward to the sensations in the abdomen associated with the in and out breath. Mindfulness of the entire body is helpful for relaxing the mind, but this technique of focusing on the abdomen, which is commonly taught in the Burmese Theravada tradition, can be especially helpful for stabilizing the mind. Many Buddhist traditions, including Zen and Theravada Buddhism, encourage the practice of counting breaths as a means of stabilizing attention. And this advice is found in the Indian Mahayana tradition as well. The Theravada Buddhist tradition is based on the teachings attributed to the Buddha as first recorded in the Pali language, and it is focused on the attainment of one's own individual liberation or nirvana. So we'll be talking about the Theravada tradition, particularly a little bit this evening, but in the next few days, in the evening sessions. The Mahayana tradition is based on the teachings attributed to the Buddha as recorded in Sanskrit, and it centers on the realization of Buddhahood for the sake of all beings. One Mahayana sutra, for instance, states, so he's quoting a sutra now, which says, "How do you correctly note with the power of mindfulness the in and out movement of the breath? You count them correctly." And now he's quoting from a Sangha, a great Indian Buddhist master from the 5th century, 4th, 5th century, who says, a Sangha suggested an alternative technique. This is for counting. When the inhalation has come in, count 1 with mindfulness applied to inhalation. When the inhalation has ceased and the exhalation has gone out, count 2, thus counting up to 10. The number of counting must not be too little or too much. This is called counting individually. So here another alternative is on the in-breath you count 1, on the out-breath 2, next in-breath 3, 4, so forth. So you can count more or you can count less. We were counting 1 on a complete breath. You could also do 2 or 3 complete breaths and count that as 1, like that. So you can do more or less depending on what works for you. And again, as I said, for some people, they find that counting, even as a beginner, is just another distraction. So if you don't find counting helpful, leave it out. If you find it helpful, bring it in when you're distracted. Buddhadasa, a 20th century Thai teacher, translated the word anapanasati, so this is the word that's often used in Theravada tradition, which is mindfulness of breathing. which is usually translated as mindfulness of breathing, as mindfulness with breathing. What we attend to in this practice is the field of tactile sensations. What we attend with is the breathing. Do your best not to lose contact with the ebb and flow of the breath as it influences sensations in your abdomen. Keep your mind open and relaxed, never constricted. You might be surprised to see how much discomfort arises in your body, even when your practice sessions are relatively short and your meditation cushion is comfortable. This is normal, so don't become discouraged. You may view involuntary thoughts and bodily tension as informative signs of underlying mental and physical imbalances and learn from them. The unrest you experience in your body and mind is not the real problem. It is symptomatic of the extent to which your whole psychosomatic system is out of tune. Let these symptoms remind you to relax the mind and breathe into areas of tension in the body. So again, and this is something we'll be looking at in more detail in the evening sessions, a little bit later, is that when we, of course, try and do this practice, we notice probably a lot of discomfort in the body, a lot of resistance in the mind, and so forth. But as he said, this is just symptomatic of how out of tune, out of balance our body and mind is. So rather than fighting with that, we can simply keep releasing any tension in the body and keep releasing any distractions in the mind. And then balancing, as I said, on each breath is on relaxing and releasing on the out breath, and then if we're becoming dull, sharpening the focus on the in breath. So that's a little bit more about this practice focusing at the abdomen. So we'll again now do another 20-minute meditation focusing on the abdomen. So a couple of things again. So bare attention, observing the sensations directly, and maintain that mindfulness throughout the entire cycle of each breath. And again, try and keep the body as still as possible. Don't sort of keep moving and itching and scratching, and that'll just be distracting. Of course, if you've got a lot of pain in the body, in the knee, you may need to adjust your posture, but try to keep the body as still as possible. And again, if you find it helpful counting or noting the breath and you need, bring it in. If not, leave it out. So let's do another 20-minute practice before we break for lunch. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. And with each out-breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. Focusing on the sensations of the breath throughout the body. And now, with that basis of a relaxed body and mind, shift your attention to focusing on the sensations of the breath in the area of the abdomen. Focusing on the sensations of the rising and lowering of the abdomen as you breathe.